How does it feel? General manager of the Jets, Mike Maccagnan, has it sunk in yet?
Yeah, it's still a little surreal, but yes, it's sunken in a little bit. So it feels good, though. It feels very good.
Does it mean something to be the general manager of a team in the state in which you grew up in?
Yes, I would say it's kind of a sort of a dream come true kind of situation in terms of being close to where you came from and where your family currently resides. But yeah, having history in this area, it's kind of a dream come true.
Now you're kind of in that nebulous exit 8 on the turnpike. So is it Philly or New York? Because you can kind of go either way, because I know I'm kind of in that area where the cable kind of supplies both Philly and New York. So how did you feel growing up as far as where you were kind of more attached to?
I must admit, I always felt more attached to New York, and maybe it's just because so many people I knew commuted to New York City for their jobs and stuff like that. But, yeah, we were pretty much equal distance, but I've always sort of felt more of affinity, or, when people would ask me where I'm from in New Jersey, I always would say, well, we're kind of south of New York City. Bigger landmark.
There you go. Now, I mean, you've kind of really, you kind of laid the groundwork for this and did all the grunt work, so to speak, starting as an intern. Was your aim all the time, Mike, I want to be a general manager in the NFL?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I think I always kind of felt, whatever job you had that you're doing, you just did it to the best of your ability. And, hey, if luck and fortune kind of open doors for you, then so be it. You just do it through hard work. But I never ever sat out or started out with a plan to say I wanted to be there at this position at some day or some point in time. But let me just say this. I am honored and extremely excited, and this would be a dream of mine to be a GM. But I never sort of, I never started with that was the intent of all my work and all my hard effort. I just kind of, everything I always kind of focused what I did was simply to do my job to the best of my ability to help whatever team or organization I was with to win.
Now, you said you want to build through the draft, but does that mean you won't be as aggressive in free agency, or first and foremost is that building through the draft is what you want to do?
Well, I think so. A lot of teams, and I think I wouldn't be the only person who would say this, or at least general manager who would say this in the NFL. But the reality of it is that if you really want to have long-term success, the best way to do it is through the draft, and that takes time, obviously. But the point being simply is you bring in players. You have the ability to obviously do a good job scouting. You can get a lot of return and yield from the draft, but you also have those players for an extended period of time before they become free agents, and then ideally you want to re-sign your own, because in theory you're going to know those guys better than anybody else. So in a perfect world, yes, you want to build through the draft. But obviously there's other avenues to go acquire players and talent. The NFL, obviously pro free agency is one of those areas, and a very big area. But I would say this, I always caution people, like, to say you're going to be active in free agency or aggressive in free agency doesn't necessarily mean what our free agency strategy is, whether we're going to spend a lot of money on higher type or fewer players, or spend or spread the money around amongst a lot of players. But my feeling is this: if we are going to be very active in free agency, we have a lot of cap space, and definitely an opportunity to kind of bring guys in that can make us more competitive and better at certain positions, which is what we will do. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to chase a few high dollar guys or spread our money around low dollar guys, but we are going to be very active in free agency.
Now, Mike, I'm wondering, do you consider yourself a little behind the eight ball? And I ask you this as you go into the draft. You did a nice thing, actually. You notified the top scouts from the Jets, we're not going to need you, and now they have time to find a job. But all the work they've done during the year scouting, that's out the door, too. Now, obviously, you did work well with the Texans. Will you have enough information, or do you have to play catch-up?
Well, I think we are going to make a couple of moves. I mean, obviously with Terry and Jeff, I did make a move there. There was a small window of opportunity that I can bring in some guys that I would like to. I basically, when I went into this job, I had known, and I was going to try to bring in if the opportunity presented itself. So really, from my standpoint, was to let Jeff and Terry get out there and hopefully land with another team. So that's why the time I did it. But I am bringing other people in to fulfill those spots. Who do have experience and obviously exposure to the players. I myself was a college director, so I've really been all over the country seeing these players myself. So I do have a little more familiarity with that. But yeah, to a degree, in terms of all the work we have to get done before the draft, we definitely have a lot of work to do. But the moves we made were not without a plan.
Mike, is it too early for me to ask you whether you believe you have a quarterback in Geno Smith?
Well, I would say this, in fairness to Gino, like we're just getting our coaching staff in here, and we obviously have to figure out what kind of offensive, and defensive systems we're going to run respectively. I do like. I think Gino has ability and has talent. I'm kind of, again, I haven't watched every tape on him from this season, or even last season for that matter. But I do think there's definitely potential in him, and that's what we need to kind of work with and find out. So not to get too far ahead of myself, I really, to me, this is going to be. I'm kind of excited to work with Gino, to kind of see what he is, and part of it's not just watching him on tape; it's kind of seeing how he works and approaches the game from an intangible standpoint. So that being said, I don't know, to answer your question, what exactly Gino is going to become for us, per se. But I do think he's a guy that we're kind of excited to work with and see how he does.
We're talking with Mike Maccagnan, the Jets' new general manager. Mike, obviously you have the 6th pick in the draft, and the draft is going to be so important for the Jets to rebuild. So just to make Jet fans feel confident, we're just going to go out and tell them that you're totally responsible for the pick of J.J. Watt. Is that cool?
No. Let me say this. I will, and I always tell people this too. Like, when people don't realize how much work goes into the draft process. I mean, literally, it's a year-round process. And there are, between the college scouts and the national scouts and the college directors and the pro scouts and the pro director and the trainers and the strength coaches and all the coaches that evaluate these guys. I mean, there's so much work that goes into them, even from our, director of security that kind of does background checks on them. So I kind of circled back. I always, to me, I'm more of a team first guy. So when we kind of, we as a team make a good pick, it's not just, again, there's a lot of people in the process that probably never get recognized for all the work they do that should be acknowledged. But me personally, yes, I was a part of that process that landed, really for what we end up getting an amazing player. And really a cornerstone player for the Texans going forward. But that's an example to me of the process working well and having a lot of good people involved in it that really worked hard to get obviously have him be the 11th pick in the draft that year.